When my dad discovered Mom's affair, he didn't yell or fight. His silent revenge left her on her knees begging for forgiveness that I'm Benson, 24, and I work as an apprentice glassblower at a studio that makes custom pieces for hotels and restaurants. Still live at home because the pay isn't great yet, but that's how I ended up with a front row seat to my parents' marriage detonating. My dad, Derek, is 52 and runs an oceanographic survey company. He maps underwater terrain for oil companies, offshore wind farms, submarine cable routes, that kind of thing. Has 3 vessels, about 15 employees, contracts all over the world. He built it from nothing over 20 years. The man barely finished high school but taught himself bathymetric mapping, sonar interpretation, all of it. He's the quietest person I know. Never raises his voice, never loses his temper. Growing up, I thought that made him weak. I was wrong. My mom, Diane, is 49 and works as a textile conservator at Harrington's, one of those auction houses where they sell million-dollar tapestries and SHD. She has a master's degree, speaks 4 languages, and never let any of us forget how cultured she is compared to Dad. She'd make these little comments at dinner parties about how Derek wouldn't know a Monet from a macaroni painting. He'd just smile and pour more wine. 6 months ago, I started noticing things were off. Dad would come home from the office, and instead of his usual routine, beer, news, asking about everyone's day, he'd go straight to his study. Not angry, not sad, just distant, like he was somewhere else entirely. Mom, meanwhile, was practically glowing. New clothes, new perfume, constantly on her phone. She'd always been vain, but this was different. She started working late 3 or 4 nights a week. Said Harrington's had some major estate acquisition that needed her expertise. One night in March, I came home around 2 a.m. after my shift at the studio. Mom's car wasn't in the driveway, whatever. But I heard something from Dad's study, this low, broken sound. I stood outside his door for maybe 10 minutes before I realized what it was. My father was crying. Not sobbing, just these quiet, controlled breaths like he was trying to hold an ocean inside his chest. I knocked. He didn't answer. I went to bed and pretended I hadn't heard anything. 2 weeks later, Mom was in the shower and her phone kept buzzing on the kitchen counter. I wasn't going to look, but it was face up and I saw the preview. Can't wait to taste you again tonight. From someone named Vince. My stomach dropped through the floor. I knew that name. Vincent Moreau, the gemologist who authenticates jewelry for Harrington's. French guy, tall, always wearing these expensive suits when he came to their parties. Mom had introduced us last Christmas. She'd held onto his hand a beat too long during the handshake. That's when everything clicked. The late nights, the new clothes, the way she hummed in the morning like she had a secret. Mom was effing around. I didn't know what to do. Tell Dad? Confront her? I spent 3 days feeling like I was going to puke. Then Thursday night, Dad called me into his study after Mom went to bed. Vincent, he said, not looking up from his laptop. I need you to understand something. My heart was pounding. He knew I knew. Your mother thinks I'm stupid, he continued, voice steady as a flat line. She thinks because I work with boats and sonar instead of Renaissance paintings, because I didn't go to some fancy university, that I can't see what's right in front of me. He turned his laptop toward me. On the screen were dozens of folders. Photos, screenshots, credit card statements, phone records going back for months. Vince Moreau, he said, like the name was a piece of rotten meat. Started in January. She's been meeting him at the Grandview Hotel every Tuesday and Thursday. Room 412. She pays cash, but forgot I can see the ATM withdrawals. I stared at the screen. There were photos of them entering the hotel separately, timestamps matching. Her car parked in the back lot. Credit card charges for lingerie at places she'd never shopped before. How long have you known? I asked. Since February 10th. She came home with a hickey on her shoulder. Tried to say it was a curling iron burn. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've been mapping seafloors for 20 years, son. I know what a mark looks like. Why haven't you confronted her? That's when he looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I've never seen before. It wasn't rage or sadness. It was calculation. Pure, cold strategy. Because when you hunt something bigger than you don't charge in screaming. You set your trap and wait. Over the next hour, he laid out what he'd been doing for the past 2 months. First, the money. He'd been slowly moving funds from their joint accounts into a business account she couldn't touch. Not enough for her to notice. A few thousand here and there, disguised as equipment purchases and survey expenses. He'd liquidated their joint investment portfolio, claiming he needed capital for a new vessel acquisition. Second, the assets. The house was in both their names, but the mortgage was through his company as a business property tax advantage. He'd had his lawyer restructure it 3 weeks ago. She'd signed the papers without reading them, trusting him like always. The cars? Transferred to the company fleet. The vacation cabin in Vermont? Sold to his brother for $1 with a private buyback agreement. Third, the business. This was the masterpiece. Dad's company was worth about $3 million. Mom always assumed she'd get half in a divorce. What she didn't know was that he'd been restructuring for 2 months. Brought in two partners, old friends from the industry, and diluted his shares down to 34%. Still maintaining control, but reducing the marital asset value. He'd also the most valuable survey equipment to a new LLC registered in Delaware. But here's the thing, he said, pulling up another document. I'm not doing this just to protect assets. I'm doing it because she needs to understand what she threw away. The document was from a private investigator. Vincent Morrow wasn't just cheating with my mom. He had two other women on the side, including a 26-year-old graduate student. Your mother thinks she's special, that she traded up. She's about to learn she's just another Tuesday night. I didn't know what to say. This wasn't my quiet, passive father. This was someone else entirely. Are you going to divorce her? Oh yes, but not yet. Not until everything is in place. And when I do, it won't be quiet. It won't be private. She humiliated me, made me look like a fool in my own home. So when this ends, everyone will know exactly who she is. That was 3 months ago. Update 1, posted 2 weeks later. The comments on my original post were mixed. Some of you said Dad was being too cruel. Others said Mom deserved everything coming. I've been struggling with it myself, but I wanted to update you on what's happened since. Dad's been executing his plan with military precision. The asset protection is complete. Mom has no idea she's already lost access to about 70% of what she thinks is theirs. But the psychological part? That's been harder to watch. He started working out, lost 20 pounds, bought new clothes, got a decent haircut. Mom noticed and made some comment about middle-age crisis. He just smiled and said he wanted to be healthy for the future. She had no idea he meant a future without her. He also started going out more. Business dinners, he said. Industry conferences. Weekend trips to survey sites. All legitimate, all documented. But he made sure to mention them casually, just enough to plant a seed of doubt. Mom started asking more questions, getting slightly anxious. The hunter becoming hunted. Meanwhile, her affair with Vince was escalating. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Last week, she came home with a $3,000 handbag and said she got a bonus at work. Dad complimented it, even took a photo of her with it. I knew that photo was going into his evidence folder. The worst part was family dinners. My sister Nora came home from college and Mom sat there talking about honesty and trust while giving Nora relationship advice. Dad just cut his steak and nodded along. I wanted to scream. Then Thursday happened. Mom announced she had a conference in Miami next weekend. For days, very important for her career. Dad offered to drive her to the airport. She seemed surprised but pleased. After she went to bed, Dad showed me her email. There was no conference. She'd booked a couple suite at the Ritz with Vince on Dad's birthday weekend. That's it, he said. That's the line. He made a phone call to his lawyer. Then another to someone else I didn't recognize. Then he did something that made my blood run cold. He smiled. A real, genuine smile. Vincent, I'm going to need you to help your sister move out of her dorm next weekend. But semester doesn't end for another month. I know. Tell her there's a family emergency. Tell her she needs to come home Saturday morning. Dad, what are you planning? The end. I've never been scared of my father before. But the way he said those two words, calm and certain as death, made me realize I never really knew him at all. Mom left for her conference yesterday. Dad drove her to the airport, kissed her goodbye, told her to have fun. She actually looked guilty for a second. Then she walked through security and didn't look back. Dad's birthday is tomorrow. The family's coming over, his siblings, Mom's parents, cousins, everyone. Mom thinks she's missing it for work. She's about to learn different. I'll update after the party. Update 2, posted 3 days later. Jesus Christ. I don't even know where to start. Saturday morning, I picked up Nora from college. Told her Dad needed the family together. She knew something was wrong, but didn't push. We got home around noon. Dad was in the kitchen, calm as ever, preparing food for the party. Your mom's flight gets in at 4, he said. She'll be here by 5. I thought she was gone until Tuesday. Plans change. The guests started arriving at 2. Dad's brothers, mom's parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, close family friends. Maybe 30 people total. Dad was the perfect host, laughing, telling stories, pouring drinks. But I kept catching him checking his watch. At 4:47, Mom walked through the door. Her face was white. Behind her was Vincent Morrow, looking like he wanted to dissolve into the floor. Behind them was a man I didn't recognize, tall, built like a linebacker, wearing a suit. The room went silent. Diane, Dad said, raising his beer. Welcome home. How was Miami? Mom's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Oh, I'm sorry, Dad continued. How rude of me. Everyone, this is Vincent Morrow. He's been fing my wife for 6 months. You could have heard a pin drop. Grandma actually gasped. And this gentleman, Dad gestured to the man in the suit, is Robert Hutchins, my process server. Robert, would you do the honors? The man stepped forward and handed Mom a thick envelope. Then another to Vince. Diane Morrison, you're being served with divorce papers. Vincent Morrow, you're being served with an alienation of affection lawsuit. Mom's hands were shaking as she took the envelope. Derek, please, we can talk about this. We are talking about it. Right here, with family, the way you apparently prefer. He pulled out his phone, connected it to the TV. Should we start with January 15th? Photos appeared on the screen. Mom and Vince at the hotel, kissing in the parking lot. Timestamps and dates on everything. Or February 8th. More photos. Receipts. That's when you started stealing from our joint account to buy lingerie. Though I'm curious, was the $400 La Perla set for him or one of his other girlfriends? Mom's dad stood up. Derek, that's enough. No, Richard, it's not. Dad's voice never rose above conversational. Your daughter made vows. In front of you, in front of God, in front of everyone here. She broke them. And she did it in my house, in my bed, while spending my money. He clicked again. Screenshots of texts appeared. The explicit ones were blurred, but the dates and times were clear. Tuesday, March 5th, 2:30 p.m. Can't wait to feel you inside me tonight. That was during Nora's birthday lunch, Diane. You texted him about fking while our daughter was blowing out her candles. Nora started crying. Mom tried to go to her, but Nora stepped back. Don't touch me. Dad continued, methodical as a prosecutor. Email confirmations for the Miami trip. The couple's suite reservation. The champagne and strawberries order. And this was supposed to be my birthday weekend. 53 years old, 27 years of marriage, and my gift was going to be you in another man's bed. Vincent finally spoke. This is harassment. I'll sue. No, you won't. Dad pulled out another folder. See, Vince here has been busy. Not just with my wife. Patricia Lowe, married mother of 2. Stephanie Chun, engaged to be married next month. And let's not forget Amber, the graduate student he's been promising to leave his non-existent wife for. He handed copies to Mom. You weren't special, Diane. You were just convenient. A middle-aged woman desperate enough to believe his BS, wealthy enough to pay for hotels. Mom collapsed into a chair. The sound that came out of her was inhuman. The divorce is already filed, Dad continued. No fault state, so you'll get your share. Of what's left. The house is a business property, so that's off the table. The cars are company vehicles. The investments were liquidated for business expansion, all legal, all documented. Your retirement account is yours, of course. About $60,000, I believe. You can't. We built this together. No, I built this. While you were getting your master's, I was working 18-hour days mapping the harbor. While you were at wine tastings and gallery openings, I was negotiating contracts in Houston and Aberdeen. You decorated the house I bought. You spent the money I earned. And when that wasn't enough, you decided you deserved more. He turned to the room. I'm sorry you all had to see this. But she made me a fool in private. I won't be one in public. Then he looked at Vincent. You have 5 minutes to get off my property before I call the police. The lawsuit will proceed. I've already contacted your employer about the ethics violation of sleeping with a client's spouse. Good luck with that. Vincent ran. Literally ran out the door. Mom tried one more time. Derek, please. It was a mistake. I love you. We can work through this. Dad walked over to her, slowly, and for a second I thought he might soften. Then he leaned down and whispered something in her ear. I was close enough to hear it. Every morning for 6 months, you kissed me goodbye tasting of another man's cock. There's no coming back from that. Then he straightened up, walked to the door, and held it open. Get out of my house. Mom looked around the room for support. Her parents wouldn't meet her eyes. Nora was sobbing into my shoulder. Nobody moved. She stood up, grabbed her purse, and walked out. The last thing I heard was her car starting and driving away. Dad closed the door, turned to his guests, and said, "Who wants cake?" The party continued for another 2 hours. Subdued, but people stayed. They shook Dad's hand, hugged him, told him he did the right thing. After everyone left, he sat on the couch and stared at nothing for an hour. "You okay?" I finally asked. "No," he said, "but I will be." That was 3 days ago. Mom's been calling nonstop. She's staying with her sister. Vince dumped her the day after the party. Apparently, his other women found out too. Dad had sent them the evidence. I'm still processing everything. Part of me thinks he went too far. Part of me thinks she deserved every second. All I know is I learned something about my father. The quiet ones aren't weak. They're just waiting. Final update, posted 1 month later. It's been a month since the birthday party explosion. Figured I owed you all a final update on how everything shook out. The divorce was finalized last week. Dad's strategic planning paid off. Mom got about $300K total between her retirement, savings, and her share of the remaining marital assets. Sounds like a lot until you realize she thought she was entitled to half of a $3 million business and a $900K house. She tried to fight it, but her lawyer basically told her to take the deal. The prenup Dad had her sign 20 years ago, that she forgot about, was ironclad. Vincent Moreau is F.ed. The alienation of affection lawsuit is proceeding and Dad's lawyer says he has a solid case. But that's not even the best part. Turns out, Vince was using his position at Harrington's to lowball grieving families on estate appraisals, then buying pieces through a shell company. Dad's pie found evidence and forwarded it to the state attorney. Vince is under investigation for fraud. He lost his certification and Harrington's fired him to avoid the scandal. Last I heard, he left the state. Mom also lost her job. Not officially because of the affair, but Harrington's restructured her position out of existence 2 weeks after Vince was fired. Hard to be a conservator at an auction house when everyone knows you were FING the appraiser. She's living with her sister, applying for jobs. The family has mostly cut her off. Her own parents told her she made her bed. Nora's in therapy. She's angry at everyone. Mom for cheating, Dad for the public humiliation, me for not telling her sooner. But she's slowly coming around. She and Dad went fishing last weekend, just the two of them. First time in years. And Dad, he's different. Not better or worse, just different. He started dating last week. A marine biologist named Carol who works for the state fisheries department. They met at a conference years ago, but she was married then. She's not now. They went kayaking on their first date. He smiled more in those 3 hours than I'd seen in the last year. He also did something I didn't expect. He took Mom's photo albums, the ones from when they were young, and mailed them to her. No note, just the albums. She texted him, "Thank you." He didn't respond. I asked him if he regretted how he handled it. The public humiliation, the calculated destruction of her life. "I regret that it was necessary," he said. But she didn't just cheat, Benson. She made me small in my own life. Every day for months. She looked at me like I was nothing. Kissed me goodbye thinking about him. Sat at our dinner table texting him while I was right there. She KL'd our marriage slowly, cruelly, and with contempt. I just held the funeral. I think about that a lot. About how betrayal isn't just the act. It's the thousand small cruelties that come with it. The lies, the gaslighting, the arrogance of thinking you'll never get caught. Mom didn't just cheat. She demolished Dad's dignity piece by piece, then expected him to quietly accept it. He refused. Some of you will think he was too harsh. That forgiveness would have been the higher road. Maybe. But forgiveness requires repentance, and Mom wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she got caught. Sorry it cost her everything. But not sorry for the betrayal itself. There's a piece I'm working on at the studio now. It's a sculpture made of layered glass, strong, beautiful, but with deliberate fracture lines running through it. When light hits it, the cracks become visible, casting shadows that tell their own story. It's supposed to represent resilience or some BS, but really it's about my family. We're broken in ways that never fully heal. But we're still standing, still catching light, still creating shadows and beauty from our damage. Dad saw it yesterday when he stopped by the studio. He stood there for a long time, not saying anything. "It's honest," he finally said. Sometimes that's all we can be. Then he invited me to go deep sea fishing next weekend. Just us, out on his survey boat, pretending to work, but really just existing in the space between what was and what comes next. I said yes. The last thing Mom sent in their text exchange was "I'm sorry for everything." Dad showed it to me, then deleted the conversation. "Some things don't deserve space in your life," he said, "not even as regrets. I'm learning that silence isn't weakness and patience isn't passivity. Sometimes the most devastating response to betrayal isn't rage. It's the methodical dismantling of every lie, every deception, every assumption that you were too stupid to notice or too weak to respond." Dad noticed everything. He responded to all of it, and he did it without raising his voice once. That's the kind of man I want to be. Not cruel, but not weak. Not vindictive, but not forgiving of those who don't deserve it. Strategic in protection of what matters, ruthless in removing what doesn't. Mom called me yesterday. First time since the party. She wanted to know if I'd have coffee with her. I thought about it for a long time. I said no. Maybe someday. When the glass doesn't cut so deep. When the fractures have scarred over enough to handle the pressure. But not today. Not while Dad's still learning to smile again. Not while Nora's still in therapy. Not while the shadows still hurt more than the light. She made her choice in that hotel room every Tuesday and Thursday for 6 months. Dad made his at that birthday party. Now I've made mine. Family isn't just blood. It's loyalty. It's showing up. It's choosing each other even when it's hard. Mom forgot that. Dad never did. Even in his cruelest moment, he was protecting what was left of us. That's all I've got. Thanks for following along on this F-Ket-up journey. For those asking, yes, Dad's doing better. Yes, the business is thriving. Yes, I'm still processing all of this in therapy. And yes, I still believe he did the right thing. Not the nice thing. Not the forgiving thing. The right thing. Sometimes that's all we can be, right? Even when it's brutal. Edit. For everyone asking, no, I won't share the pie's info or Dad's lawyer. Stop demanding me about revenge strategies for your own situations. This isn't a playbook. It's just what happened to us. And to the person who said Dad was a sociopath, no. Sociopaths don't cry alone in their study at 2 a.m. They don't keep photo albums for 27 years. They don't teach their kids to fish or build businesses from nothing. Dad's not a sociopath. He's just a man who refused to be diminished by someone who promised to love him. There's a difference between cruelty and consequence. Mom faced consequences. The fact that they felt cruel was entirely her own making.